Good evening, Namaste all, to the day 6 of the Let Go series. Sit comfortably, back straight, eyes gently closed. Let's start the session.
There's some resounding in your voice.
In my voice?
Yeah.
Okay. So sit comfortably, eyes gently closed. Awareness on the breath for a few rounds. Let's chant 3 rounds of Omkara. Each time breathe in, breathe out, continue with the Om chanting. Inhale deeply. Bring the palms together in Namaskara Mudra. Omkara and the prayer all together. Breathe in. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste, welcome all again to this Let Go series. All these days we have seen that the Vedanta talks about understanding what is our true nature. Who am I? Yeah, in that we saw that Prakriya helps. Prakriyas are methods of investigation, and Upanishads have given us few Prakriyas like the Sukha Dukkha Pariksha. So what is the state of our mind when we are in that state of happiness or in the state of dukkha? Then we saw the Avastatraya Prasthana, again where at the different levels of our waking, sleep, the dream, sleep state, how is our state of mind? And then beyond that, when we are in the Turiya state, then we saw the Panchakosha Viveka, which tells us that we are just not just the body, but we are beyond the body. And finally, we understand that we are the bliss and the silence. And everything is born out of this silence, this Ananda. Then we saw that the necessity, the prakriyas are there, but can we have our own prakriyas? Yeah. So yes, Shastriji was telling us that each of us can develop our own prakriya to understand the Vedantic truth. So in that we saw the necessity for sadhana. Why sadhana needed? Because we also saw that the mind is so conditioned, full of vasanas. So we need to ensure that this vasana is reduced. Vasana is full of the speed and that focusing, where we need to let go and slow down and expand, feel that expansiveness. So that is the need of sadhana. And yesterday we saw the Jnana Marga, one of the Jnana Yoga through the path of knowledge, how we try and understand our true nature. So this path of knowledge involves Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. You read scriptures, you attend satsang, whatever you hear, then whatever you're listening or hearing or reading, you contemplate on it and then meditate upon it. So that is one path through the path of knowledge, Jnana Yoga. Then we saw the Yoga Marga. How through the Yoga Marga you can calm down yourself. We saw that yoga is mana prashamana upaya. Okay, yoga is a solution to calm down the mind. All the Ashtanga yoga practices that we do are aimed at calming down the mind. But is this Jnana Marga and Yoga Marga easily practicable by everybody? Can everybody practice it easily? Yeah, knowledge. Sometimes we are so, the nature of us, if it is, we are Rajasic nature. We cannot be sitting in a satsang or reading scripture to understand the Vedantic truth. So are there any different paths by which we can understand the truth? So in today's talk, Mukund Magge and Dr. Vidya Prakash, we will be understanding more about the different parts of the sadhana. So over to Mukund.
Thank you, Vijaya. Once again, namaste. I welcome you all to today's session on Let Go series of talks. Let me share my screen.
Yes, yeah. Mukund, good.
So, today's topic is Shubha Karma. So, this topic is actually the word Shubha Karma is coined by Shastriji, and he named this Shubha Karma for the activities which he called the pious neutral activities, like the rituals of worship that we have in our Hinduism. So we should be so thankful to Shastriji for having brought about this aspect of our Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism and put it in his series of talks, and finally we have it in our book. It's a wonderful topic to discuss because I myself, as a youngster, though we had a culture and tradition to do all the rituals and practices at home, somewhere the logical mind may not be accepting these things, especially when they are seen from a Western viewpoint. The moment a Westerner is looking at this in a different way, we fail to come up with the answers for these rituals and practices. So let's see what Shastriji had to say on this. It's quite wonderful and interesting to go through it. So yesterday we saw that the different margas available to mellow the mind. So Shastriji always, I see wherever he has taken up the topic, it's about silencing the mind, how to mellow the mind. And the different topics that we have already dealt regarding the silencing of the mind has been, we have seen the Gnana Marga yesterday. Vindhyaji very beautifully brought out the aspects of the Gnana Marga. So ultimately, the Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana, they all lead to the ultimate silence. So that silence is the highest state that one can achieve. So Gnana Marga is one of the routes, like she explained that we have so many routes to go to a certain point, even in our worldly locations. So it's the same with the Adhyatmic aspects also. And Yoga Marga, like Vidya Ramani, she brought out the different aspects of yoga. And we see within yoga, there are so many routes explained by so many people, and especially the route of the Ashtanga Yoga, which Patanjali has exposed to his Yoga Sutras, which we call the Eightfold Path. That is one of the major paths that is normally agreed and accepted for the reaching the ultimate silence, state of silence. So now the question,
Mukund,
yeah.
Can you put it in presentation mode?
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah. So can there be other methods? So Vijaya Madam very rightly put it in the beginning that even though there are so many methods, does this suit one and all, the Gnana Marga or the Yoga Marga, or we are going to come into the other margas also in the coming, in tomorrow's lecture, hopefully, we have the Karma Yoga and we have the Bhakti Marga. So these are the different paths available. And are there other routes available apart from these so-called glorified margas? So Shastriji, he brought out the point that people who have a heavy load of rajas and tamas, maybe the Gnana Marga or the Yoga Marga may not be suitable. If I take the example of my own perspective, I find the Gnana Marga a bit difficult for me to read through the scriptures or the Sanskrit and understanding them, especially because it needs a guru to take you through that. Doing a self-study or Swadhyaya is not so easy. So I may not adopt that. I also keep asking sometimes Raghuramji. So he tells, you find out something else, do whatever you like, but be on the path. That's the most important thing. Also the Yoga Marga, it appears easy. Easy in the sense to adopt. We always say, if somebody is having some trouble, come to the yoga path, come to the yoga mat, let's do the practice. But again, we see the experience, my own experience in the classes have been that there are many who are unable to do the practices, even though it's the basic practices of asana or pranayama. They're not easy to take up, and they need a very good teacher also to be guiding. So in this background, it shows that there has to be other methods too. And what did Hinduism do for this was to follow the rituals and practices. I'll come to that a little later. So there are some more questions that we need to ask, having told that there are many paths. But finally, we need to come to the meditative path. Now, in the meditative path, is the meditative path reaching that meditative state? Is it so easy? No, it's not at all so easy. Shastriji always would quote the example that ask anyone to just sit for 2 minutes. It's not possible. Okay, if you progress little more, you may be able to sit for a few more minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. That is a test for the progress also, maybe. So the pressure builds up because the unspent energy is all coming and building up the pressure. So this is the reason why one cannot come into a meditative state. And it's also the question of the vasanas. We have seen the vasanas or the impressions that have built up within us as a result of our previous experiences. And it can be a long, old experiences. And they also say it can be our previous life experiences also. And this lead to the tendencies that we have in this particular life that we have. And it also influences our thought pattern. And also when we talk of thought pattern, the Arishad Vargas, what we call the 6 enemies of our thought pattern, that Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. All these are all entangled and interpersed in our thought process, and they are all coming in between our progress. So if the Gnana Marga cannot lead us, some people, if the Yoga Marga also is somebody finding difficult, can we have something which are neutral practices which can help us tone down the mind? So for this, what we call the daily worship and rituals, or it's also described as the Karma Kanda, is this also, could this also be a way, is the question that comes up. And here I want to quote one example of when we talk of the meditative state. Recently I had a cousin who had a mild stroke, and he actually he was advised that you take up yoga it'll lead to a faster recovery, or some yogic practice. And then there was another person known to him, and he went for a meditation class actually. And believe it or not, he went there the first day and he tried the meditation, and he just simply could not stand it. He just came out, and after that, after two or 3 days, he met me and he told, no, I want to take up yoga. Somebody suggested meditation, but no, he was actually angry at the person who did the meditation session for him. And he told, no, that I cannot do this. And it was full of frustration, anger. And so this is what happens when one person is not ready with the heavy load of rajas or tamas. So maybe meditative practice is not possible. You will have to take up other practices. Now, another point which Raghuramji also pointed out yesterday in his summary, and also which Shastriji brought out, is that whenever we take up a path, whether it is Gnana Marga, Yoga Marga, or even the Marga that we are discussing today, the Karma Kanda, it always happens that we may feel that we are not progressing in the path. So these are the times that we should not get disheartened, and it can happen that we feel that we are not progressing, or we are even backtracking. It can get a feeling. And he says, Shastriji says that these are the times the questions come up within our mind. And the point that Shastriji brought out was questioning is actually a restricted state of mind. The questions arise in everyone. But when we have questions, we are in a very restricted state. So the way to come out of that restricted state is to get into a seeking state, get into a state where we are trying to search for something and trying to apply the abhyasa or the techniques that are available to us. Only that seeking, searching, and applying is the energized state for us. And this will provide us the energy. And after that, the questions will start dropping. The question itself will drop and the progress will happen. So this was a very beautiful point Shastriji brought up on the questioning and how to remain on the path. Now, dissolving the vasanas and leading to the silence of the mind is the topic of the day. And the rishis of our ancient tradition, they have come up with some devices or means to weed out our deep-rooted vasanas. And this they called as the daily rituals of worship and also the chanting. And this is what Shastriji has called as Shubha Karma, the daily rituals and worships that we do. And this rituals of doing the practices of offering to the God is actually suited to a very large population, especially in India. And it has been widely adopted. Now let us go a little more ahead to get into some more details. We all see that when people are unable to sit, what do they do? Mostly they get into the bhoga activities of trying to expend the energy through games, or some people work away, they're workaholics, they try to work their way. Fine. When you expend your energy, there is a silencing happens. That's why many people like sports, because somewhere the energy gets expended and then there comes about a silence. And there are some workaholics, but especially when we do the work without any attachments, just for the sake of doing it, that also leads to silence. But now we need to know the Karma Kanda interpretation of how it leads to silence. And our japa and chanting and doing our puja rituals, are these all primitive, and are they absurd or are they absurd practices? These are the things we will try to answer in this through the view of Shastriji. So Shastriji is very clear when he says that all the puja rituals have been devised only to mellow the mind and silence the mind. And they have been designed in such a manner that they are done in a slow and slow pace, in a meditative way. They have to be done. You take our own Shodasha Puja Upachara. There are 16 steps to the puja that we do. The 16 steps, just for, I will try to reiterate, because especially when we do the Ganesha Puja, we do it in the public platform. What a wonderful way. We do it at homes. And there are, it takes 2 to 3 hours of the whole puja. So they have 16 steps. The dhyana is there, avahana, asana, padyam, arghya, achamana, snana, vastra, yagnopavita, gandha, pushpa, dhupa, deepa, naivedyam, tambulam, and pradikshana namaskaram. So these 16 steps very systematically done one after the other. Now what happens when one does this kind of slow rituals is we gain focus, and slowness also sets in when we do this in a proper fashion. And what is more important, which Shastriji always told, was that we should not be doing this in a meaningless way. We should be knowing fully well the implications of the practice. That is, this is meant to give slowness, and keeping that in mind, if we do our practice, it gives the real meaning to our rituals and worship. So the way of doing the puja is very important. We should know this and then do the practice. Now, so these rituals of puja and different practice have been done by our ancestors from long time ago. But it was the observation of Shastriji that many people do the rituals, and as long as the puja is there, they are okay and fine. But when the whole puja process over, they get back to the old stage of fretting and fuming, and back to their normal state of mind. So this is what we need to guard against, and the whole purpose of doing the puja is to get an extended state of that peace, what we have in the puja, trying to get it extended to a longer period of time. I remember just last week we had a Ganesha puja in our own community hall, and we had the puja on in the morning. Evening we did the Visarjan, a beautiful process of the whole day, and whole night and whole the next day we were in that beautiful state. We were thinking so nicely, we were able to do, and it was a very nice feeling we had in that whole process. So that is the kind of slowness that needs to set in, and we need to derive the slowness and extend it for a longer period of times. There should be no hurriness when we do the puja rituals. And what all the naidhanya that he spoke of, Shastriji spoke of, the naidhanya can set in when we do the puja rituals in a proper manner. And Shankaracharya himself who has actually formulated a lot of the puja rituals and practices. And he was very clear in his commentary that the puja rituals are done only for chitta shuddhi, that is for purifying the mind and slowing down the mind. So Shankaracharya also was very clear, and he was the one who has actually provided a lot of scope for the puja rituals. Wherever he went, he has advocated the puja rituals to be adopted. Shastriji also brought about a very important point that when we do these rituals, there is a sacredness and there is a holiness attached to this. So if we this is a kind of sakara dhyana. It is a form, it is a meditation in a form, because if we try to meditate on the mundane activities or focus on mundane things of the world, we don't get that holiness or sacredness. But when we bring the God element into this, it gives that sacredness and holiness, and automatically tends to bring in a more firmness in our approach. And more beautifully, what Shastriji himself told, that there has been always arguments that we have so many gods and each one doing his own, praying to his own God, thousands of gods. In fact, we say 33 crore gods are there. But Shastriji would say this is a plus point of Hinduism. It is not a negative point. Each one can design his own God. If I need wealth, I pray to Lakshmi. If I need my scholarship or scholarly growth, I do, or knowledge, I pray to Saraswati. Or if I need to remove the obstacles, I pray to Ganesha. So this way, each one can adopt and design his own God, design his own practices. So this way, it is actually a plus point for people of varied tendencies who can adopt this kind of practices. And this is the defense of Karma Kanda that Shastriji used to tell. And it is a savior for many people who are unable to adopt any other practice. But having said that, he would say that when we do these practices, the ultimate goal should not be forgotten. And it is the goal, the purpose. If we keep it in mind and then do the activities, it gives full meaning. That was what Shastriji has told about the Shubha Karma. And move on to the next slide. So just some more Karma Kanda activities like Sandhya Vandana, Gayatri Japa, Sahasranama, Ashtotranama chanting, the Vratas that one adopt, the chanting of Purusha Suktam, Sri Suktam, mantra chantings. So what does all this mean in these rituals is another doubt that we get. But like was explained, it's all for the silencing of the mind. So because the stock of vasanas is very high in certain or many people, the karma kandas, the japas and chantings are one of the easiest way to reduce the load of or burden of the vasanas. The practice of Sandhya Vandanam, for example, this practice involves a ritual for which takes around 20, 25, 30 minutes, depending on the way you do it. But it also involves the chanting of the Gayatri. And every day it's recommended to do 108 Gayatri mantra japa chanting. And this chanting again, I found, I was told by a guru, and I adopted it and found very beautiful results. Is out of the 108, the first 36 should be chanted in a loud way. The next 36 should be chanted in a soft way. And the last 36 should be chanted in the mind. So this chanting, what a beautiful way. You're from your loudness to slowness and ultimate silence. That slow chanting in the mind leading to silence. So beautiful design of the Gayatri Mantra chanting. Another example that comes to my mind is my cousin, her son had finished his Upanayinam, and as most parents and mothers, he would go and learn the Sandhya Vandanam, and he would sit in the puja room and he used to do his 108 Gayatri mantra chantings. And as he would chant and chant, he would close his eyes and almost start falling over. His mother would try to go and poke him and push him to get up and tell, why are you getting into the sleep? Actually, now I realize that it is not a sleep state that he was getting into. It was that silent state from that repeated chanting, how beautifully even a young boy can get into that. And later on, I used to discuss with her, and then she also realized that what a beautiful way of doing the practice it could be. So when it can happen in a young child or a boy, why not in anybody is the thing you have to ponder. And especially Shankaracharya has devised many composed many many things which could be adopted for chanting. The for example, the Lalita Sahasranama, Saundarya Lahari, Viveka Chudamani, Bhaja Govindam, and name the god, and all the gods he has made compositions, the Ganesha Pancharatna Stotram, Nirvana Shatakam. If you can't do the puja, how to do the puja in your mind, Shiva Manasa Puja, and scores of such things. And what we see nowadays is a lot of senior people, even after the retirement, they form groups and they keep and start doing the chanting. I've seen the case of my own parents, how during their, when my father was working, he was not able to do this. But after retirement, how they got into these groups and started chanting, and they would spend their time beautifully. And if they are not able to do in the group, he would do alone. He would never do this in his working life. But later on, how beautifully they adopted. And they all enjoyed that really greatly. So all this goes to show how such practices are actually the ways of clearing the stock of energies, the stock of vasanas, and how this can lead to silence. And I have known many scientists, engineers, very learned people, so-called modern days, who have been learned in the modern fields. They have come back and adopted these kinds of chanting and practices and rituals, and they are deriving maximum pleasure to get into the silence. And it's also my personal experience, because when I do spend some time in the puja room, it's not only about doing the puja, how to start the cleaning process, how to start the decoration. The decoration leads to a beautiful creativity. In our own puja rituals, we have the different kind of alankars. We tell Benne Alankara, or we do a different Patra Alankara. There are different kinds of Alankara. So all that leads to only the silencing. And what a wonderful way devised to clear the stock of energy, and for the common man, and who don't understand anything, just go and sit and do the puja, chanting on a holy name. That is the way of doing the rituals and practices. And the way to look at it, if we understand the way and do it, then it gives much more meaning. And this we need to explain. Shastriji's way of that explaining is a way to explain to the youngsters who don't understand this probably. And instead of ridiculing it, we have to take pride in another beautiful road to silencing the mind. So that's all from me. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Mukund. It was a wonderful explanation of how Karma Kanda, following the rituals, are basically to calm down the mind. Here, I am, like you said, how the process itself can be beautiful, right? The Alankara and all that. So here in Narada Bhakti Sutra, Narada says that Puja Adishu Anuraga iti. Anuraga is the process itself. Process itself can be calming. Yes. So now we have Dr. Vidya with us. Dr. Vidya, now among all our teachers, she is the youngest teacher, should have at the age of 18, who finished her yoga teacher training. And right from that time, she's been in touch with Raghuramji and attending Shastriji's lectures also. So let us now hear from her about the next path. How different can we choose a different path of japa and meditation to calm down the mind. Welcome, Vidya.
Thank you, Vijayaji. Namaste, everyone. Welcome you all for the second session. Let me share the screen. Just a second. Is it seen?
Yes, Vidya.
Okay, thank you. Myself, Vidya. I'm a yoga consultant and a naturopath. I'll be taking you through the topic Japa and Omkara. Well, before even I get into the topic, I would like to just speak a few words on Shastriji. Shastriji when I met him, I was a teenager. The age itself is so naive, and I was totally a novice to the field of yoga. I met him in one of the conference in Prashanti. Then I happened to hear few of his lectures, talks. See, that is the age when yoga doesn't go into your head. You can't comprehend anything of yoga, such a serious topic. So, but still, he used to make it so simple that even something I could get out of it. Even such a teenager like me, such a young girl like me, could even understand something out of it. And sometimes I used to feel even weird because he used to give all the day-to-day and household topics like washing clothes, washing utensils, drinking coffee. Such was his simplicity, such was his examples. So that was the way how he used to approach people. And the second thing was I always admired him was his approachability. Whatever the questions you went to him, it might seem silly for yourself, but a question was so important to him, whether it came from a highly intellectual person, a 70-year-old person, or a sadhaka, serious sadhaka, or a 17-year-old person, or whatever it is. He was so approachable. Any question, sometimes the question might be not important for you, but he would take it so rigorously and he would go into all the pains to answer that question. And the third thing was he was the warmth which I miss. As soon as you see Shastriji, it was just like, any grandpa. His dress itself was like that. It was with a shawl around and a simple panche and shirt and a beautiful smile every time. There were so many people around him of different walks of life and different professions. And still you could go to him and you could approach him for whatever reasons, but whatever silly reasons, simple reasons you could go. And the warmth, just standing by his side, whenever he's talking to people, just standing by his side used to be so, is so overwhelming, and it's getting nostalgic whenever I speak about him. So, thank you for giving this time to speak about him. And next, we'll get into the topic directly. See, man, the human being, or we ourselves, we have two kinds of worlds. One is external world and the inner world. The outer world and the inner world, man always tries to bring balance between these two. So why he wants to be harmonious? He wants to be happy. So for that, he can do whatever and however. That's what we do. We want to keep ourselves happy. Whatever, if something goes wrong, we always want to try to maintain that balance just by adjusting the external factors around us. Okay, something outside. We want to change some place, something, or some people, some situation outside around us. But the Shastras say totally opposite. It says, don't go to the outside business, because outside, whatsoever you do, it will not change and it's out of your control. So it is totally what you want to change is internal. You have to adjust your internal space. Shastras are just like your manuals, you can go back to it and look into it and come back and lead your life. Just like that, even Let Go book is an abridged version of our Shastras, a manual. It's a perfect manual. If you just go through the book, at least once, if you go through the book, at least somewhere you will feel, I should try this. You just can't go through the book just like that and leave it. Somewhere it keeps you telling, yeah, I have to listen to this, I have to do this. And if you're a serious sadhaka on the line, then it takes you into the different realms of sadhana itself. So that's why I call it as a practical workbook for any sadhaka. So now let us go into the characteristics of the outer world or the external world. See, everything external world is of speed and focus. See, there is nothing wrong in it, because whatever karma is happening, you can't do without that focusing at all. The energy so much we have between in the form of focus and speed, that energy is spent and it culminates into the karma itself. That is fine unless and until it has some result, it has some karma, everything is fine. But what if when I go to office and when I come back from office and still my mind lingers, oh, I should not have spoken like that in the meeting, that fellow was so rude, I could have given him much better back. Since all such things happen, all these thoughts goes on. So there is no karma as such, but the energy is just piling up, and this results into restlessness. Sometimes even we don't have that, you just can't sit simply. We need mobile to be with us, we need TV, if we don't have all these things, at least we need to sleep, or we need to have some food or something. So somehow, because such is the energy, the boredom forces, it piles up. So this is what is the outer world, which we have, the external world. But the internal world, the characteristics is completely naidhanya, or slowing down, and the expansiveness. So such totally opposite things together. So what we do always is we try to balance each of them. So the external world is different for each one of us. The characteristics of the external world remains the same, whether it's for a housewife or for the Prime Minister of the country. The housewife, maybe there is a limited range of activity, but for a Prime Minister, there is a wide range of activity. But the outer world is the same, with the same characters, with the same focus, with the same speed, everything. There are restlessness, there are boredom forces, everything. And the inner world is totally same. Everyone wants to slow down, everyone wants to expansiveness, everything like that. The thing is, for example, if there is cooking going on, and if I'm cooking and if I'm in a relaxed mood, everything goes on fine, my energy is less spent, and the same 2-3 dishes is done very beautifully. But if there is any time limit or somebody is going to knock on the door at a particular time, then there is so much of restlessness within me, and the same 2-3 dishes can take hell lot of energy out of me. And by that time, I feel like, oh, I just want to get out of this kitchen. So that's why there is no balance. I'm not happy with what I'm doing. So not satisfied, so not slow down. So there is no balancing. So that's for this problem, Shastriji used to give a solution. He used to say, have 2 compartments within your mind. Yesterday, we were speaking about DVG's quote. He also spoke about the 2 compartments. The uniqueness of Shastriji is, so whatever the idea he gave out, he just didn't give out it as an idea. He wanted us to do and to apply it for each moment-to-moment situation. So he was such a serious sadhaka. He wanted us even also to be like that. On the moment-to-moment basis, he wanted us to check. He said, try to make a compartment within yourself, within your mind. It's a swarupa sthiti, or the silence, where there is naidhanya, where there is vistarata. Have to try to have that silence within you. And whatever activity outside the Jagat Vyapara which goes on, that goes on in the periphery. The silence, so first of all, we need to make up that cover of silence. And then slowly we have to get into the Vyapara. Now to explain this further, so when there is any situation which goes on, what we do, we tend to react. Okay, and the worst part is we settle down in that reaction itself. If you can appreciate this, so when there is some situation, we tend to stay there. For example, early in the morning, if somebody fights with you, if your wife or husband has a fight with you, and you're totally disturbed, and then after that, You go outside, you want to take a bus, and that bus is late, and you go to office. Your boss scolds at you, and somehow you have to take out that, so you scold at your employee. So that's how it goes. And by the time you return home, you are fed up of everything. So because there also you are reacting. And now what Shastra asks us to do is, it asks us to respond to the situation. So what do you mean by, if you can appreciate this, what I'm trying to show? So there's a stimulation, and totally you come back to your Naidhanya sthiti, or the calm state of mind. There was a stimulation, you attended to the stimulation, you responded whatever you wanted to, and you came back to that calm state of mind. So here also, in reaction also I is there, in response also I is there, but what is not there is the burden of I. Whichever the burden of I, what I think is, in whichever restlessness or boredom or whatever speed you look into, this I is the culprit. I mean, so, but this is the same I which is used as a tool to do everything outside, and even for the spiritual sadhana too. But it becomes a burden for us. So just take out that burden and life goes smoothly. So that's what he said. Just try to be in that silence, just like a tortoise. You're just in that, within the shield, and slowly if you want to do any activity, you want to engage into the activity, just go, take and come back. This is the idea. But here the few questions arises. That if you slow down, oh, what if my effectiveness comes down? How, I mean, there will be superficiality in whatever I do. No, it's not the reason. It's not the thing at all. If you're loving somebody, you will love 100% more. If you're doing some activity, you will do 100% more better. That is such as the effectiveness of being in Swarupa, being yourself calm inside and doing the vyapara or the activity outside. But unfortunately, our all vyapara activity has overshadowed the silence. And this is where we are. And this is what Shastriji says, try to make a distinct compartment. For that, we need to be aware each and every moment. That's what, when he said, each and every moment to moment, like if you're sitting and talking like this, even this talking, somebody barges in. So each and every second, okay, I need to be calm. So whatever happens, so you have to respond to the situation. So just like that, moment to moment awareness. Okay, this is all said and done, but how to do this? It is very easy to understand this concept, but to do this, it takes a lifetime altogether. So he says you have to do abhyasa. Well, there are different ways, as we have seen, yoga marga, raj marga, karma marga. There's one more thing, as in the karma marga, we have the chanting of japa. What does exactly japa do? Japa is a neutral chanting. It's a set of words where you keep on chanting regularly and at a particular interval, and it's a mechanical chanting. It just goes on, right? Repetitive chanting, not mechanical. I want to say it is repetitive chanting. So what happens is that boredom forces which is piling up, the restlessness which is piling up, the energy is spent over in the throat area, the mouth area, and that energy forces will not, the boredom forces will not reach your brain at all. So by the time you finish off this japa, we would have all experienced that. So by the time we finish the japa, there is a kind of emptiness which appears within us, that silence which within us. This is what we want to achieve. That is what we want to make cover of that silence around us. So longer the higher your restlessness, the longer the japa should be. That is the idea. Yeah, you can sit and do any place. Particularly, we say it should be a silent place, no distractions, no disturbances. But also you can do it whenever it is required. See, when you have 5 minutes time for attending an interview or a viva, so there Om Namah Shivaya won't work, you have to chant Mrityunjaya mantra itself. So that would be the amount of restlessness, and that's how you have to counter it with the japa. Being a scientist himself, Shastriji does not leave us there in the book. He says, come on, you test yourself how well you're doing your japa. So he says, shut down everything from the external world. Don't sleep, don't have food, don't see TV, no mobile, no connection without friends and family. Just check how much you can stay alone together, all hours together or minutes together, and try to check the progress, what you have done in japa. Japa has one drawback. I mean, not only japa, everything, I think every karma has a drawback, that it becomes mechanical. See, when you're learning a car driving, you'll be very, very careful. Where is the gear, clutch, accelerator, etc., etc. But once you start driving, you'll be sitting in the car, but you can have a world tour and come back. So the same way with the japa happens. So once your learning phase, you'll be very careful with the mantra, intonation, and everything. But once you learn, once you understand that, and when you're well versed after chanting few number of times, it becomes so mechanical that the mouth keeps on saying, but your mind goes everywhere and it comes back. So that's why awareness is very important. Once you have learned the mantra or the japa, try to keep the mind on the japa. It's very easy. Now you need not have to learn anything. You have learned. So that energy is not, you need not have to spend. So you just have, your mouth keeps chanting, just try to be there. That is the idea. And japa slowly transition itself into omkara. It's a graceful drift. Once the mind attains that level of silence, the japa slowly drifts into omkara. That's what Shastriji also mentioned in his book, Sri Ramakrishna, when he says, Sandhya merges in the Gayatri, and Gayatri merges into Om, and Om into silence. Sandhya, that is Sandhya Vandana, that means all the rituals what we do, we do not have to keep on doing it. When you just start keep doing it, your mind slowly, when your mind reaches that level of silence, the Gayatri Japa can be a sufficient one. And when if you are chanting and if your mind attains certain level, then Omkara can suffice. So then what is Omkara? So well, the second topic of the day of my session also, the Omkara. Shastra says, what is Omkara? Omkara is everything. That is Sarvam. All is Om. Okay, Sarvam is Jagat. So what is Jagat? Jagat is represented by Nama, Rupa and Karma. You can't imagine anything in the world without these three. You think about anything, there's a Drishya Rupa and you have some name to it. So everything is included is Jagat. I mean, whatever there is Nama, Rupa, everything comes under Jagat. Now this, it's in three different versions. Either you can comprehend in the Bhuta, Bhavishyat or in the present tense. The whole Jagat is that whatever I can comprehend the Jagat, from my Indriya, whatever I can comprehend, everything is totally only in this thing, in the past, present and future, and in Nama, Rupa and Karma. It encompasses, Omkara encompasses all these things. And also, he says, unmanifested. The Indriya Gochara, whatever I could perceive through my Indriya, is what is the manifested world with Bhuta, Bhavishyat and present. Also, there is unmanifested. And Shastriji gives this example of attention span. He says, when somebody is speaking to you, and if you're not paying attention to him, and you'll just ask him, please come again. Right? So if just for listening to somebody, you need that focusing, that attention. So if beyond that attention, there is layers of Jagat. So the Omkara, not only my comprehension, my my perception, there is beyond, so much beyond that perception, and that is unmanifested. And Omkara includes unmanifested also, manifested and unmanifested. And why this simplification? He being a chemistry professor, so he gives you an example of chemistry. In chemistry, you have, we learn about elements, the various elements and compounds. So he says, ultimately, the scientists have reached the basic thing as a basic element, basic components of elements as protons, electrons, and neutrons. In the same way, the seers and the saints past of the Sanatana Dharma have reduced the whole activity or whole Jagat into just Akara, Ukara, and Makara, Omkara. He appreciates the scientific rigor of the ancient seers. Well, why at all do we need this simplification? So the thing is, whenever you want to reduce the volume of the the sound system, what do? We just try to reduce slowly. The big sound becomes smaller sound, minimum sound, and slowly you just off it, or a tick sound is heard that you have offed it. In the same way, the whole gamut of world is there outside, and in your mind it is running continuously. And so what you are going to do, you're reducing it to the minimal activity of chanting Omkara, Akara, Ukara, Makara. And slowly it drifts into the silence and you drop it off. And he says this is the only way you do, because to understand that silence, to go into that silence, you have to reduce all other your activity. And Omkara is such a beautiful tool that it reduces the whole activity into simplified 3 syllables, or Omkara. Yes, that's what we want to be there in the Swarupa Sthiti or the Brahma Sthiti. That is what we want to just take it as a, keep it in our cover. We want to be in that cover. So still we have to get into the Jagat Vyapara, because we are in the world and karma, there is no other option. We have to do karma, and the karma phalas, or also there is no option in that. The Shastras gives the Karmakanda, Japa and Omkara. There is a beautiful transition phase from Karmakanda to Japa to Omkara. Well, Karmakanda or Shubha Karmas, if you have the awareness of these 2 compartments each and every minute, okay, the silence and the Vyapara going outside. So this moment-to-moment awareness, if it is there, you need not have to, not only involving in religious and cultural activities, in Indian, in our daily lives, even getting up in the morning, brushing your teeth till the time you go back to bed, everything becomes Shubha Karma. And then there is a drift of Japa and then Omkara. So the Omkara includes Akara, Ukara, Makara, as I said. It involves, it includes everything, the gross to dream to Nidra and the unmanifested form. And what is left after Makara? There is only Prana Vyapara which is left over. There is only Prana left over. And this, as you reduce, as you silence down, you get into that Brahma Samipyam. He says Brahma Samipyam because he doesn't say you attain Brahma Sthiti. Because our job is to just get as nearer to the Swarupa Sthiti. So just as I gave you the example of that tuck sound of the tape recorder, when you reduce the sound. So that tuck sound that happens by the grace of Guru and God. So we can't even think about that. So what is our job is just to come to the Samipya, as nearer to the Swarupa Sthiti. That's what Shastriji also has mentioned in the book. He says, extolling or understanding Omkara is fine. It's the first step to the sadhana. But the benefits are taken only when we start chanting Omkara, start doing Japa, then Omkara and other things. So let us all keep up the sadhana. So Dhanyavada. So thank you one and all for listening, for patient listening.
Thank you, Dr. Vidya, for a wonderful summation of how to do the japa. And I'm sure, like me, all of the party, whoever is gathered today, would have enjoyed your explanation of how just being with Shastri Ji gave you the thrill. And just how, with simple example of household example that he gave. Even in the book he mentions, right? How just the chore of just, you might be an executive in the office, but now the lockdown time, we are, doing all our work, right? Right from sweeping, swabbing to washing vessels. So how that can be made into a Karma Yoga activity. Yeah, very beautiful. So thank you, Vidya. Raghuram ji, over to you. You need to unmute.
Namaste everyone. Thank you so much for beautiful presentation by Mukund and also Vidya. And nice summing up, Vijaya, what you have done is very good. In fact, Vidya share a lot of experience with Shastriji. I think that's one thing in this particular group. Vidya has that advantage. Many others did not even see Shastriji. But he's a personality like that. He's like any of us, a common person. He was like that. And his whole approach of sadhana and all those things were not kind of threatening or frightening kind of a thing. Many people, the moment that you think you are a spiritual sadhaka, it's almost like as if you are alienated from the society and you are totally different. And maybe that you will have all kind of weird experiences and all that, they would have it. But Shastriji is very simple. Actually, today's two presentations will echo that idea of Shastriji that sadhana is in our day-to-day life. How many times he would have mentioned in his regular talks that he was giving in our satsang groups about cutting the vegetable. He would say that I would grab that activity of cutting the vegetables from my wife because that's a great sadhana for me. The same way he would say that, those days that the groceries come, he would say that it is his choice to pick up the groceries and unload into the various containers and this and that. All that kind of an activity, he will describe it as how beautiful sadhana it is. And therefore, that his whole approach, his whole direction is towards the spiritual sadhana. And that sadhana, what he mentioned, was not somewhere sitting in a cave, somewhere sitting and chanting some Sanskrit verses and all that, but it's in a simple day-to-day life that we could bring about. When he gave that, he never even discredited or looked down upon the great rituals that people are doing. In fact, he would also mention about there are big yagas and yajnas, people do that. He says that how wonderful it is that how many people in that yaga and yajna, they're continuously glued onto the consciousness of spirituality and the divinity, always there with them. So therefore that sometimes we think that what is really happening with them because the priest is chanting some sutras, some shlokas and some Sanskrit verses and we don't even understand. But he said that very presence if you are there and then all those things are going on and you are just absorbing those things. Also, you see the amount of peace of mind that goes on. And that itself is something which is extraordinary. And this culture is extraordinary culture because that we have developed so many different aspects which are in the form of various rituals that we do and various puja practices that we do. And all the activities connected with them are also supposed to be the spiritual activities. And only one thing very beautiful said that if we understand and do it, then there are several advantages because of that. One thing is that when we don't understand and do it, then we are in a hurry to finish it. We say that this is over, that's over, let's finish it fast. In fact, many times people say to Pandits also when they come home, say maybe some Vaikuntha time or some other rituals or Satyanarayana Puja, they put prayer condition to the priest saying that you should finish it in half an hour, you should finish in 1 hour. We don't have much time. See, that means to say we avoid all those things, we try to avoid all those things because we don't know the benefit of it. In fact, in the many Satyanarayana Puja invitation cards I've seen that are people telling also that we have Satyanarayana Puja at 10 o'clock, but then they, with underline, with the highlighted letters, they say that lunch starts at 1 o'clock. That means basically you don't even have to come to Satyanarayana Puja, you just come for lunch. That is good enough. The very idea is that this whole practices, all these practices have been reduced to something which is like unwanted kind of a thing. And many times I've seen the people on the puja that they are sitting, other than that, they were all gossiping, they were all involved in various activities. I would say that all these rituals, they are not only for the people who are sitting there and listening to it, but the people who are around them, who are invited, those people also, it is for the sake of their benefit that we give this particular thing. The food that we give and the dakshina that we give and is something, but is much more than that. An opportunity given to you to sit through the whole mantra kanda, the karma kanda, which is in the form of mantra, in the form of various chantings of Upanishads that are given in the case of Shraddha Karma, or in the case of Vaikuntha, or in the case of any Satyanarayana Puja, any puja that we are doing. So my whole request is the way that Shastriji puts it, is to see that whenever there is an opportunity for you to go to any of these functions, anybody's house that is there, please find out when all these chantings will go on by the Brahmins, and then you sit through that. Look at the beautiful way that the Brahmin chant, and then in one voice, 10, 15, 20 of them in one voice they chant, and while chanting that you can see the wonderful melody. In fact, today itself on the other occasion, I was talking about the mantras and their effect on the system and all that. That rhythm, that system that is created by these mantras, the way that our people have given the ideas, it is so extraordinarily elevating us. See, what we have said, all these things as Shastriji put it, don't dismiss these practices as something which is meaningless, but they have an extraordinary, wonderful meaning. But then don't even dismiss that you don't know the meaning of it and you are chanting it. Even the people who are actually doing these things also do not focus on the meaning that is there. But then what is important? All these things are in the category of Shubha Karma that is supposed to be take away your vasana. As Mukund very beautifully said it, while doing those practices, you see that how peaceful your mind is, how gentle your mind is, how easy that you become as if that you are floating. They have this, that's why we say that mantra mugdha. That means to say you just become absorbed in that mantra. Why are these called as mantra? Basically the idea is by just repeating or by listening to that, putting your attention on top of it. When you do that, this is supposed to take you beyond the clutches of, or the beyond the chains of your vasana. And that's why mananaha trayate iti mantraha. Trayate means that will give you freedom. That will take you away beyond that. And all these practices, what we are doing, is for the vertical growth of the person. See, material world is there to give you the horizontal development. But all these practices, all these things that are given in our culture and in this particular way is supposed to be essentially for the sake of vertical growth. Today, the science, our intellect, everything is helping us to see that how we can horizontally grow. When we say horizontal growth, it is basically that yes, we have so many gadgets, so many ways that we do it, and all those facilities. What are these things for? If you look at it, they make your life comfortable. They make your life comfortable so that you can travel easily, you can sleep nicely and all those things. But there is no vertical growth. As long as there is no vertical growth, there is no spiritual development. And whatever that innovations and development that they are doing in the material world, is to see that how horizontally we grow, but not vertically. If we want to vertically grow, and these are the things which are important, and this need to go vertically is there from the most ancient times to even today. That's why our Karmakanda is so important from the ancient times even today. This is what Adi Shankaracharya said, that Karmakanda is something which is so valuable. That's why when you look at the Upanishads, look at the Vedas also, there is a large part of Karmakanda, a large part of Brahmanas, but then small little portion of Jnanakanda, and that's what the Upanishads are there. Upanishads are the cream of the culture, but then Karmakanda is also important. Many translators, saints, many people who talked about ideas of Vedas, they sometimes accuse this idea, the Jnani, saying that they have neglected Karmakanda, or they are looked down upon Karmakanda. Probably that thought was there at that time. That's why Shastriji was very strongly suggesting the people that, look, I'm talking to you about Advaita philosophy, but it is not to look down upon Karmakanda, because the pedestal on which the Advaita Siddhanta is resting on, the foundation on which this Advaita Siddhanta is resting, is because of this Jnana Yoga, because of this Karmakanda that was there. And that is the reason why we have elaborate Karmakanda, and then Jnanakanda is there. And in everybody's house, everybody's mind, this Karmakanda is necessary. Therefore, at least 20 to 30% of your activities, fill it up with the Karmakanda. As Vijay was mentioning in Narada Bhakti Sutras, Puja Dishu Anuraga iti Parasharya. That means basically right from the beginning, whatever that you do, the puja aspect of it, it's all beautiful, wonderful karma that we do it. In fact, when I give the talks on Narada Bhakti Sutra, I just want people to experience that. So I take all the participants of my class, we go to the temple. I have a friend of mine who is the priest in that temple. And with the help of, I arrange the puja activity. And this puja activity is so beautiful. All the people, right from the beginning, that they go there to clean and organize the flowers and arrange all those things. Everything that people get in, I involve people to do that. And they come in such a way, I say that, look, this is something which is an extraordinary class of yoga. And this is not ordinary class, it's an extraordinary class of yoga. And this yoga, you have come here with the highest respect. When you come with the highest respect, that means to say, you should be dressed up nicely, nice, wonderful, like you are going for a marriage function. And then you involve in every activity that you do it. I see every time when they do it, it takes almost like 3 to 4 hours. And that 3 to 4 hours later on, they say that this is the best class that we have attended, because best experience that we have done here. In fact, we ourselves, when we go to the temples, we have never seen this kind of a thing to happen to us. But today we understood why we do all those things. We really thank Narada who has given that kind of a thing. Particularly all these things, whether it is Narada Bhakti Sutra, Sarada Patanjali Yoga Sutra, essentially the focus is sadhana. And this sadhana aspect is something which Shastriji always used to emphasize on that. Whenever I used to go various parts of the world, and then when I come back, first thing is that I would go to Shastriji. Shastriji would comfortably sit in his house, and almost like closing the eye or half closing the eye, he would listen to me, ask questions point by point, saying that, so what did you do in Germany? Who did you meet? What did you do in Austria? Who were there? Not only that, I have conducted some seminar or conducted some workshop. I said, can you please tell me some of the important questions that came up in the seminar in Austria? And I have to remember, I say, first time it may be difficult, but then now I know that Shastriji is really interested in all those questions. And I share with them with all that joy, not only in Austria, then Germany, then USA or England. And it is not one place or two places, not one person or two person, but it is about 10, 15 people that I would have shared. And then not only that, what is the question they asked, he would also, so what is the answer that you have given? And then he would test on that particular answer, ruminate on that answer, But can you believe one more thing that Shastriji would always do is that when next year when I go to the trip and then he come back, then he would say, so you went to Houston. Did you meet this person? Did you go? I mean, when you went to Houston, did you get a chance to go to Dallas? If I say Dallas, oh, did you meet that person again? And he would ask the name of that person. That means to say it is not he who visited, it's not he who talked to the people, but it's I visited and I talked to the people, but the name, not only the name, but their very question that he would remember. Last time he asked this question and he was stuck with the Vijnanamaya Kosha, but then he wanted to understand about the Anandamaya Kosha. What do you think this time? Did he understand? Did he go further? Like that, so keen that he was doing it. He was so keen about not only his own personal sadhana, but the sadhana of the people who have come across, have asked these questions, and what are the answers that they got, all those things. And when I talked to them about Shastriji and his keen interest and all that, many people would have visited Prashanti, many people would have visited his home, and when they come, when they say that I am so and so, my name is Prakash, I'm from this place, immediately Shastriji is, oh, you're Prakash from Dallas, or we are Prakash from Detroit. So, you know, last time that you asked this question, they would be surprised, they would be shocked, because they have asked question to me, not Shastriji. And I would have shared that idea with Shastriji, but Shastriji would remember that. That's the reason why I was so earnestly feeling that the whole journey of yoga is supposed to be for the personal sadhana. Unfortunately, today we are interested in so many other things, you know, like for example, the certificate, degrees, research, paper, this, that. But in the process, somewhere the sadhana has become like a last priority, least priority. So this whole seminar of let go is to see that everything else we let go and let's hold on to sadhana. The sadhana should be the main way that we should have approach towards this Vedanta. If it is not there, sadhana is not there, all that is like the way that Shastras explain, Vagvaikhari, Shabdajari, Jnana Vijnana Kaushalam, all these details that we have, and then Shastra says, all these things are there to feed your stomach, nothing to help you. Bhuktaye, natu muktaye, does not give you freedom. The whole idea when we say let go is towards that freedom. That is the idea. I'm so thankful to Yoga Vasishtha, Yoga Bharati, organized this seminar and such beautiful speakers. You know, all these people are young. First time that they're coming to the topic on this topic. In fact, before all this thing started, I had a corner of my mind, a hesitation. This is Shastriji's extraordinary, wonderful teaching. If we put in the book, and then I'm asking these people to read and then present all these ideas. Not only read, but I said that you understand, digest and present these ideas. What a wonderful way that these people have presented. I'm really thankful to all of you who are presenting, and very thankful to all of the people who have attended this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raghuramji. I think it is all because of your guidance and also Dr. Nagaratna's guidance to us. Yeah, so like you said, like how Mukund beautifully said, right? The whole process of doing anything is, you know, it calms down the mind. And that is what is yoga, right? So it is not that you have to stretch your arms up, bend sideways or twist and say that I've done my yoga practice. That's the whole process of doing anything, whether it be a puja ritual or work at home. Now that all of us are doing, I'm sure everybody is working from home and doing all their activities at home. So that itself can be like a karma yoga practice where the mind is calm, the attitude is right, that yes, I have to do it, there is no escape. So let me do it joyfully. Yeah. So in fact, when you said that, I was remembering that I was thinking this Onam festival just went by. Yeah. So this thinking that, oh, what to do this Onam, what normally we, you know, my uncle and all, we meet together. I make some dish, we go, you know, celebrate together. So this time I was thinking, oh, I can't go meet my uncle, then what do I do? I said, it's okay, let me try making some, you know, the common dishes that we normally make, your avial, olan, kalan and all that. And the whole process was so beautiful. I was just remembering that Anuraga Iti and
Yes.
the whole process. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I would like to tell one more thing for all our listeners and speakers and all that. Having heard this series of talks on Let Go, you should always consider that all the other people in the home who are joining and doing the work along with you, they're also sadhakas. Motivate them also to see that the whole thing in this positive way as a celebration, so that every house becomes like a wonderful place of temple.
Yes. And like you mentioned, like how Vidya beautifully put it, the Vyapara is going on, but can we also feel that
Yeah.
we are that silence with it? So when we do that, I think with
Yes.
continuous practice, we don't need to, they themselves come and tell us, oh, I think you've now slowed down. You've become much more calmer than what you were before. That is the,
Right.
reaction that we get from our, husband or children also
Right.
sometimes tell me, like, Amma, I think earlier you used to get annoyed if we don't do certain things. Now, you are at peace with yourself.
Yeah.
So let's see. Any questions?
So wonderful.
Yeah, so, but like you said, still that, the knowledge about these karma kanda as to why we are doing this, it is just basic like a ritual that, all of us are doing it. So
Yeah.
how do we ensure that this knowledge behind the karma kanda is, spread to everybody so that, people do it with that anuraga?
Right, right. We, of course, now this is COVID situation, lockdown situation, but otherwise, that whenever we do the puja, try to see that you invite one or two families, not much crowd, just to be with you as a friends together. We do it. You also do it. We also do it. Let's not increase the crowd, and then let us do one function at our house and one function at your house. Like the way Gauri, you also have Gauri small way, but Gauri, you come to my house so that Ganesha will come to your house and do it. I will be happy with doing and participating in that. Create that kind of an atmosphere that they are together and then enjoying being together. This is the way that we can really create that festival, also spiritual atmosphere. In fact, whenever I go to any of these Vaikuntha Samaradhana, Shraddha ceremony, or anything, I would not go to here and there. I would sit with the Brahmins who are chanting, sit with them, try to absorb their vibrations, the way that they are singing and all that. It's a wonderful, great gift that we have got from our culture. So many things for so many years that has been there. They chant Purusha Sukta, they chant Sri Sukta, they chant, Vishnu Sahasranama, all those things. Yes, be participate in that. Don't just spend your time gossiping here and there outside.
Yes. So somebody has asked that how to sustain the continuous practice. Why do we need to keep reminding ourselves?
Right. See, that's why these practices are very special practices, because they themselves do not have an immediate benefit it will give you. If it were giving immediate benefit, we would go for that. Like, for example, you take an ice cream, immediately it gives you satisfaction, we go for that. But these practices are the practices which long-term benefit, life after life, that they can carry with you. That's why we try to do these practices, and then doesn't matter that even if you've forgotten one time or something like that, come back and then try to do it. So this is the reason where Shastra says, that even Mandukya Upanishad says, Shanaihi Shanaihi Uparamet. Every time we are going, but then sometimes we slip, and then again you pick up and then start going. It has to be done sustainably.
Yes, I think that's what we saw, that sadhana has to be done, progress has to be very slow.
Yes.
Keep practicing. You might forget to do your practice, but again, continue with it. So that is how the progress happens.
Yes. In fact, if you look at it, is it not breaking when we are in sleep? For 8 hours, we don't do anything. But then we wake up and then start doing activity. Like that, there may be several occasions where it comes. chanting have deep meaning too. We try to learn in the next step after chanting. Yes, chantings have deep meaning. In fact, some of these chantings that are there, even if you take Bhagavad Gita also, every shloka has so much of deep meaning in that. I just share one experience about this Taittiriya Upanishad chanting. I gave the Taittiriya Upanishad chanting explanation in Los Angeles to some group, and then there was one very highly accomplished businessman, or CEO of a company, made a lot of money. He was actually, before going there, he was IIT Madras professor. He gave a big hug to me and said that, Raghuram, this mantra, my father made me to chant it right from the age when I was 7-year-old, when I had the thread ceremony. And then every day I've been chanting. I've seen the translations also, and they're nice. But then today, when you have explained after 40, 50 years, I first time felt so thrilled, and more than that, I understood very important thing is that I had such a great reverence to my father, because of him, I've been chanting this mantra all these years. So it can change one's life like that. Why do you feel special experience when we visit Tirupati or Golden Temple? Annapurnam, this is very good question, because what happens is that we not only that we resonate with these mantras and with the chantings and with that intention within us, when we go around these places, we share our own, these, what we call it as feeling, these vibrations, good vibrations, together with the whole thing. So these are the places where so many people have visited for such a long time. That means to say, in the whole atmosphere, this particular vibrations are charged. So that's the reason when you go to those places, Tirupati or Kalahasti or places like that, you get that kind of vibration, that kind of feeling, that kind of a idea. In fact, even a simple thing that in somebody's house, there are continuous chanting is going on nicely about Upanishads and all that, and then you are there. You don't feel like going there casually. You want to go there with the help of reference, with that reverence within you. So therefore, all these things are actually happening because that they're touching at your heart. Exactly. Thank you.
There is one more question. Yeah. It says that how to avoid the monotonous repetition of japa as it becomes more easy to chant.
Yeah. No, it should be monotonous in the sense that when the monotony is there, or when the japa is a repetition of that, your intellect activity is not involved in that. Okay. Otherwise, we try to analyze, we try to intellectualize everything. In japa, you don't intellectualize anything. That means you take away, you give a rest to the intellectual portion, though your mind is active. That is the advantage of the japa, which is supposed to be monotonous. So it is something which is useful. Sometimes you get into sleep. Fine, doesn't matter. And a monotony will give you the sleep, but then wake up and then continue to do it. What is the hurry?
I think that is why sometimes in the chanting they say, when you are going into the drifting off to sleep, then speed up the chanting.
Yes.
Then slow down.
Beautiful idea.
Chanting. Yeah, normally that is what they say. When you feel that, yes, so speed up the chanting. So, yeah, so the mind doesn't wander also.
Right.
So I think, yeah, why we have to make japa chanting in specific numbers. One last question.
Well, there may be some numerical reasons that they gave. That is, we have developed a lot of knowledge about the number or numerical number, these things also. But we don't even have to worry about it, because if the focus is on the number, then you miss the spirit of chanting. Then we tend to become, let me finish the chanting number, all that happens. That's why let us not count the number of chanting that we do it. Be done with the chanting.
Thank you, Dr.
That's the last question.
Yeah. So I think we should stop here. So if you have any further question, you could always put in the group. We'll try and answer it. So thank you all for patient listening on that. Is Jnana or the Yoga Marga only the way, or do we have other ways also? So today we saw about how the rituals and the other activities that we do can be a path, or the chanting can be a path. Chanting can be the Vishnu Sahasranama chanting, or the other chanting that you do, or can be a simple Om chanting. But all this, what happens is it just leads you to that calm state, silent state. So we recognize ourselves. So with that, let's end the session with the Shanti Mantra. Namaskar Mudra. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. Sarve Santu Niramaya. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. Ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om